When I was in secondary school, a teacher said that I would have the capacity to go to art school, and I'd never heard of such a thing, and I just thought that place sounded like nirvana. That if you could go to a school where you did nothing but art, then I wanted in. So it was at that point that I started focusing on it. But I've always drawn and painted and been very interested in visuality. There was a lot of visual arts interest in my family background as well. My father's parents didn't have a very full education. You know, they had to leave school at 14, but they both drew and painted in their own time. And my mother's side of the family were involved with artists and theatres in Munich in the 30s and 20s. I had that support from home. My grandmother moved back to Munich in about 1980, which is about the time I started secondary school, and I used to go and stay with her in the school holidays. And once she moved to Munich, I would go to all the museums. I was particularly exposed to the, artists of Die Brücke and the South German schools, Blauer Reiter. So I saw loads of Franz Marc, loads of Kandinsky, all the stuff that is abundant in Munich, as well as Baldung Green and Hans Baldung and Dürer, and lots of German Renaissance art. So that is, before I even did A-level art, long before I went to art school, I was very ensconced in that whole body of work. I went to Central School of Art and Design for my foundation course, which was right near the British Museum. We went most weeks to draw and observe, have a look around the British Museum. The artefacts that interest me most are the kind of cuneiform, the Assyrian and the Rosetta Stone, the codex kind of artworks, which apparently are quite prosaic. They're things like Excel spreadsheets of the ancient world. But I'm very interested in those. I was selected to be Artist for the Day at Flowers East by Sasha Craddock in about 1995, and that gave me the opportunity to develop a whole new portfolio of work, which I used to apply to the Royal College of Art and got a place. And then after that I got into the New Contemporaries and started showing in commercial galleries fairly quickly, and won the Jerwood Painting Prize in 2001. With my paintings, I think that a lot of that generative process, the machinations, are the subject matter. So there is no rehearsal. What the viewer is looking at is the thinking process explained, and that's the content. When there are generative paintings, that might be to work out procedure or composition, but it's the real arena, the activity, the thinking process is the painting itself. I wouldn't be able to remake an artwork, because what the subject is the decisions that are made in real time and shared with the viewer. Hopefully they're able to empathise with aspects of what you've been trying to rationalise or work out through the painting process, and apply it and live it through their own experience or their own professional life or intellectual life or emotional life. Coming back to abstraction and language, what I think about that is that if you don't have reference in your work, if you're not acknowledging other artists, then there's no way of entering into an abstract painting. If this is the only abstract painting you've ever seen, then it is unintelligible. It requires a knowledge of abstraction out there in general culture. I do try and see an awful lot of art. I try and stay abreast of everything that's going on. I don't just look at art that looks like my art. I like to look at Vermeer, lots of things with grids in. I like Canaletto, I like Friedrich. I like artworks in general that have structure and have something that reacts against the structure, so that there's a juxtaposition between structure and chaos. I'm trying to think about what's constant about the process, because the process changes over time. The whole point being that you don't want to keep making the same painting, that through process I'm trying to work something new out each time. When you do an artist in residency, it is a distinct project, and The great privilege of doing the residency at City and Guilds was that I had access to all their amazing facilities. In particular, I really enjoyed the etching room. So these 3 paintings, I painted the background and then applied another layer of paint on the top using decalcomania. So I coated a sheet of acetate, exactly the same dimensions and scale as the canvases, with oil paint, pressed them together and then removed it. So that gave me a chance beginning which had a certain amount of knowingness about it. I had some sense of what might happen. And meanwhile, in the etching studio, I was making 3 copper plates using the same process of either applying ground or removing ground with decalcomania and the same acetate sheets, same dimensions. And then the works become autonomous. You set up a system that you think is going to be rigidly objective, but it's very difficult to be objective, and that's where the artistic intent kind of seeps through, kind of lets itself in through the back door, and there has to be a sense in which you're working something out for that artwork in that moment in time. Otherwise, for me, there's no point doing it. There has to be some reconciliation or some new knowledge that comes out of making the work. I paint to see something that I couldn't see unless I painted it. So something that is indeterminate, something that doesn't exist until it's been thought through, and the act of painting is the thinking through. The cult of the artist as a personality, I've never really been that interested in that. That's something that I definitely think hits the grave with you. I don't paint for legacy, but I do paint for discourse. I paint to talk to my peers, to communicate with artists all over the world and beyond the arts, to open up new avenues of thinking and ways of seeing the world. I'm not very concerned with longevity, but it's definitely existentially kind of comforting to think about your work living a little bit longer than you and having more meaning than you know, being more important than little me.